Helvete, kom der vekk! Det har ikke en bikkje i. Det er en slags ting! Det imiterer en bikkje! Det er ikke mekanikk! Kom deg vekk, idioter!
Sorry for the spoilers, but if you haven't seen The Thing yet, well, it came out in 1982 and is quite probably the best horror film ever made, so I can't help you there. Also, that is the opening scene of the film, so you're actually getting the exact same experience that any of the 4.4 million or so Norwegian speakers got when they tried to watch it for the first time. Today we're taking some inspiration from The Thing and making, well, The Thing. My amazing friend Jessy challenged me and some other makers to create an ugly zoo exhibition, with the only caveat being that it must be made using these. A bag of cheap plastic animals, the kind you got as a kid but got bored of really quickly. And what better to do with them than throw them all together and make a thing. Along with the generic animals, I found these dinosaurs, some bigger models, and these 100% completely anatomically accurate skeletons. Not only have I wanted to make a version of The Thing for a while now, but this is a great opportunity to do so. Partly because The Thing is an alien life form that imitates other life forms with periods of gory, amazing horror in between, and what would be funnier than humans being humans and putting it in a zoo only for it to try and copy all the other animals it encounters there, but also partly because these animals aren't quite what I'd call to scale.
Huh?
So trying to make anything realistic with lots of parts is out of the window. But since our thing is just copying parts, we can kind of get away with it. Plus, you know what I always say, scale is only a suggestion. So first thing to do was go through all the animals I had and decide what ones I wanted to use. There were definitely some interesting characters.
Hello there.
These animals are tougher than they look. So I had to finally stop disappointing my mum, who wanted me to be a vet for some reason, and get surgical. I chopped up the toys and picked out some parts I wanted to use, and with a deburring tool and some clay I got rid of the mold lines. Now it's probably a good time to mention I was on a very tight deadline for this project. I really didn't have much time to put into this, but I do have a valid excuse. I'm a terrible person with bad time management skills. So what better to do when you have no time for mistakes than to use a brand new product you've never used before. I've seen epoxy sculpt everywhere, but it's not the cheapest to get, so I hadn't tried it yet. But I decided to give it a go since I obviously can't use polymer clay with these plastic animals, unless I want a melted version of the thing, which to be honest probably would have worked for a time before my lungs filled with plastic fumes. With the armature and first layer of clay cured, off camera I tested using 5-minute epoxy as a glue for the animals, but realised it would take too long, so instead we're going to go with our trusty old pal, CA glue. I used some on each piece to stick it to the model before giving it a good douse in bicarb. And if you're thinking, wow, that's an oddly reminiscent large pile of white powder,
The department's rookie and resident junkie.
I love this! Bicarbonate of soda.
then you've probably seen it on every other crafting video on this platform. The bicarb helps the superglue cure faster and make a strong bond filling in the gaps. Because of awkward angles, it was easier for me to just pour a bunch on and wipe off the excess. I continued on valiantly mutilating and Frankensteining these beloved children's toys into some sort of cursed homunculus until it started to come together. I liked the backs on some of the dinosaur toys, so I used those for some extra detail. There are many versions of the thing in the films, which I'm still trying to resist showing clips of for how gory they may be to those not desensitized to true horror at a young age through repeated watchings of Courage the Cowardly Dog. In a lot of those versions though, there are spindly legs or arms or limbs of some description, so I wanted to add lots of those to mine too. Although this would more technically be the thing mid-assimilation or under attack, I like the idea that maybe with so many stimuli to copy, it kind of got stuck this way and had to figure out how to get around. Using the epoxy sculpt to fill in around the animal parts, I tried to give it some texture similar to what we can see in the film. If I'd have had more time and wasn't trying to get to grips with a new material, then I would have liked to have done a much more intricate sculpt. with more pulling of the flesh and actual forms rather than what is essentially a big blob. So please don't judge me too harshly. I found using water and IPA to smooth the clay helped and allowed me to get some more of the texture I was looking for. I pre-baked some translucent polymer clay teeth, which I then stuck in for a dry fit. This is so that I don't need to drill holes into the cured clay later. I gave it a prime in Wraithbone since I wasn't quite sure what kind of primer would work best on the rubbery plastic animals, and I made sure to check in on all the new cavities from removing the teeth beforehand. After a quick run to the nearest Warhammer store, I was ready to paint. I'm sure some of you can relate where you get into painting and think, well, I learned colours in primary 1, I don't need to sell my soul to these companies, I can buy red, blue, yellow, mix every colour myself, it'll be great. And then you realise it isn't that easy, and according to all the TikToks I see, those aren't even really the primary colours and we were lied to, so f it. I'll buy every separate colour, even if they look basically indistinguishable. And since we're talking about the embarrassing amount of money I've spent on hobby paints, this video is sponsored by my own Patreon. I mean, it's not really a sponsor, not even I would sponsor me. But if you feel like supporting my channel, the link will be below, and I really do appreciate any support at all, even all the likes and comments and shares and whatnot. I basically layered up various fleshy tones, reds and purples, and added some blood for the blood god for some fresher blood effects. It was then time to stick all the teeth back in before they fell out again due to what appears to be a seriously concerning case of gingivitis. I gave the whole thing a couple of coats of gloss varnish to make it look extra wet and gross, and then I used some UHU or Uhu, I guess, with some red ink to make some lovely bloody mucusy strings all over it. It dries a little bit matte, but once you've glossed over it, they look really good. My thing needs to be contained. Wow, that sounded wrong. Let's make an exhibit. It was funnier to me to think that humans would just leave it in the least secure petting zoo type enclosure, where it was able to easily escape and find all the other animals. On a wooden board I slapped on some tinted plaster, used a brown wash and a little bit of grass flocking. For the fence I wanted to use something that looked a bit like the one in the dog kennels in the film. So this sculpting mesh was perfect. I used a toothpick in each corner and attached the fence with some thin wire and glue and then roughed it up a bit. Now we needed something for the front. If you've seen my last video, link below if you haven't, then you may recognise these and know what they are. If you don't know the context, I don't even know where to begin to explain myself. I realised at this point I couldn't find any jump rings to attach the chain, so what I had to do was pull apart the chain itself and try to hook it on somehow. This was incredibly fiddly for my shaky hands, but luckily I stayed calm, didn't get frustrated and just got it done.
Oh, off, you
Ahem. I used some washes to weather the fence in a way that says, this thing hasn't been maintained since the movie came out in 1982. And I used some Mod Podge to stick on signs that will do about as much good protecting anybody as any UK Prime Minister we've had in, well, forever really, I guess. I made this sign as a nod to one of my favourite parts of the film, when they test everyone's blood to see who is a thing.
Now I'll show you what I already know. It's a crock of shit.
I really wanted to have clear petri dishes like in the film, but as this unaired footage shows, I didn't have time to make a proper mould, and they're just too small and thin to do it the cheats way. So because of the time constraints, I opted to just use these metal ones, which are actually the pans from an eyeshadow palette I was given at about 15 and never used once. Don't ask me why I still own it. I scraped the eyeshadow out and used some rust effects and blood for the blood god to get these. You know what they say? A house isn't a home without a big patch of blood on the ground. And with that, we were ready to tuck our boy into bed for the night, and of course, to the glamour shots.
I just cannot believe any of this voodoo bullshit.
Thank you so much for watching the video, and thank you so much to Jessy and everyone for involving me in another great collaboration, and I had an absolute blast making this model. I really appreciate all the support and the lovely comments on my last video. It really meant the world to me, and so thank you all for watching again, and for any likes and comments and subscribes and all those kind of things. But with that, I'll see you next time.